Hi everyone, this is Erika Storbeck, and today we're going to be talking about new employee orientation programs. When I was thinking about building this presentation, I couldn't help but think about The Office. I feel like that sitcom captured a lot of issues and things that we feel at work, and we can highly relate. And especially in this case, I think we've all been in that situation where we've been to a new employee program and we're sitting there and we're like, man, is this the company I really want to work for? So today we're going to be diving in deep, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and why are some companies more successful than others when it comes to new employee orientation programs. Like any good presentation, I need to lay out a roadmap of what we're going to be discussing today. So first we're going to talk about the researcher introduction. Then we're going to move into topic introduction. We're going to talk about new employee orientation programs, and then we're going to talk about onboarding programs. Then we're going to compare the two. Next, we're going to move into facts about the new employee orientation programs as a whole. Then we're going to focus really in on managers and a way of making your onboarding process better with an acronym called CAMPS. And then we should probably be about done. Before we dive down deep into new employee orientation programs, I want to give you a little information about myself and my story so you can kind of understand where I'm coming from during this presentation. I graduated with my BA in Environmental Studies from the University of Washington, and I moved out to Virginia in about 2012. I went to Virginia Tech where I got my Master's of Science in Natural Resources. I'm in the military. I enlisted right out of high school, and once I got my degree, I commissioned. I was first a personnel officer, and now I'm a logistics officer, and I do that full time. I shouldn't say recently, it's been about 2 years since me and my husband got married, so we're having a fun time, still filling out the newlywed game. Right now, we currently have 3 dogs and a cat. This is one of my last classes here at Amberton, so I'm super excited. Only, I think, 2 more to go, so I'm right there. So I want to give you a little background about how I arrived to doing new employee orientation programs for my graduate research project. A couple months ago, I was sitting at work and I got an email from HR requesting a handful of my employees go to the newcomers in orientation program. And it was really weird because these employees have been with the company longer than I have. And I was like, it had been in there. So I emailed them back, and of course they're like, nope, they have to attend. We have no record. And I was like, okay. So I go up to them and I even asked them, like, have you guys ever attended this newcomers orientation briefing? They're like, no, never. It really shook me. I'm like, how important is a newcomer employees orientation if we're not even doing it within the first couple of weeks? Like, why are we giving a new orientation to someone who's been here for 3 years? So then I started thinking, I was like, do new employee orientation programs directly tie into retention numbers? And if so, how do these companies successfully incorporate new employee orientations into the company's long-term business strategy? Well, I started doing a little research, and no surprise, it directly ties in. The better the orientation program, the longer the employees will stay around. So obviously, I couldn't do my graduate research project on newcomers orientation programs if they relate to retention, because within a 5 minute of research, there's thousands of articles showing the direct correlation. So then I started thinking, I'm like, well, if this is so important and we're in such a competitive market right now for new employees that are, have talent and whatnot, why are some companies failing to put the time and energy into creating onboard programs? And then on top of that, what about the companies that do have new orientation onboarding programs like my company, but what makes them good and what makes them fail? So that's kind of where we arrived to. So I'm really looking at in this orientation is why do companies don't bother and then others do, and what makes things better and worse? So let's talk about new employee orientations. When I was researching, I found this little cartoon which I thought was very appropriate for the slide. It's this guy saying, "Hey, new guy, this is a no beard company." The guy's like, "Sorry, I haven't taken the orientation training yet." And that's exactly what orientation trainings are for. It is a one-time event that you welcome your new employees into your company. It's formally introducing your organization, your culture, your mission, the vision, and values to your new employees. This is the time when you let them know that you are a beard company or you're not a beard company, or you can show tattoos or you can't show tattoos, or hey, Monday through Thursday we are in formal attire, but on Friday you can wear jeans and flip-flops. This is the time to really let them know what you expect from them, and this is time for them to let you know if they had any questions about things like this. It should be conducted within the first day or within the first couple of weeks of employment. It's usually delivered by presentations, and they have question and answer sessions. Usually VPs or department directorates come in and give a little spiel. They also have HR come in and go over benefits that the employees might not know about. So now it's time to talk about employee onboarding. I didn't know this, and I'm assuming a lot of people didn't know this, but employee orientations and onboardings are two separate events. Onboarding is more of a department introduction. They learn about the culture of the company and the business objectives by participating in meetings or on startup projects with coworkers. They schedule regular check-ins with their manager, and their manager makes sure that they are completing the onboarding process correctly. They really focus on linking the company-wide goals with the day-to-day taskings. Now that we learned about both new employee orientation and onboarding, I just want to put out a visual so you can tell the difference between what orientation is and what onboarding is. So let's talk about the focus. The focus of orientation is your role in the company, where your focus in an onboarding program is your role in the department. Duration. Orientation is a one-time event where onboarding is a sequence of events, and that could be spread out through a couple weeks to almost a year. It depends on the company. The setup is usually in a classroom for orientation, where the onboarding is on the job. The content. Orientations are about big picture, where the onboarding is actually very individualized towards the individual. And finally, the outcome. When you're done with orientation, that employee is ready to go out to training. He's not ready to go out into the company and start contributing right away. When you finish onboarding with an individual, that individual has been through the training and they're ready to start contributing. So from here on out, I'm going to be using new employee orientation and onboarding as one program. We're going to be looking at just the program as a whole. So when I talk new employee orientation, I'm also including onboarding. And when I mention onboarding, I'm also talking about new employee orientation. We're going to be looking at it as one whole unit. So you remember a few slides back, I mentioned that when I first started researching for this project, I found thousands of articles that showed the direct correlation between retention and newcomers orientation programs. Well, here are some of the facts that were, right off the bat, wow. So first, over 1/3 of employers do not have any structured process in place. That means they don't have an onboarding or an orientation program to welcome in their new employees. We know that the first 90 days are the most critical when it comes to new employee orientation and the retention of that individual. One study even took it a little further that said the first few weeks are critical to the employee's long-term success with your company. We know that 91% of workers stay with the company for at least a year when they're part of an onboarding program. We know that employees who do leave within the first 90 days feel like they didn't receive enough training. We know that 22% of employee turnover happens in the first 45 days. And 2 decades ago, the average worker only held 4 to 5 jobs in their lifetime. Now the average worker holds 11. So the research is out there, and everyone knows, and everyone has that, gut feeling that new employee orientations programs are so critical. We know when they're not good, we know when they're bad, but why is it? That's what we're going to look at. Why are some companies doing this and some aren't?
Hey, come on in. Gina?
It's Nina, actually.
It says Tina in here, but, we'll get it all squared away. So, yeah, really happy to have you here. Here's your bathroom key. The bathrooms are upstairs, past the dining room, past the soda fountains. It's somewhere upstairs. And here's your business cards. You might want to check the spelling since we're not quite clear on all that.
Oh, okay. And my cubicle?
Cubicle, you're lucky. You're on the first floor. You're over there to the right. Somewhere over there, there's a few file folders for you. There's the Munster folder. There's the Herman folder. Make sure you get them back to me sometime today.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Great. Thanks so much, Tina. And I'm a little bit busy right now, so we'll catch up later.
Okay, I'll go do that right now.
Good luck, Tina.
Everybody can relate to the first day on the job. You can only make a first impression once. It's crucial that your management team understands the importance of onboarding new employees. Nearly 1/3 of people look for jobs within the first 6 months of employment. An effective onboarding process helps ensure your employees aren't searching. Executive coach Marcia Zeidel says there are 3 easy tips for successful onboarding. Provide a buddy for your new employee, assign them a small project, and have a welcome kit ready.
Hey, it's Katerina. Good to see you. How's the first day been?
Well, actually, it's been a little
Really? Oh, well, that's great to hear. You have a great day, and you're going to go far in this organization.
Explaining rules and regulations to a new hire is important, but new employees also need a clear understanding of what their goals are, the culture of the company, and the key people they'll interact with. And Zeidel says all that falls on the manager.
Because the manager has the day-to-day contact with the new hire. And then the manager can make the new hire's experience positive or make the new hire's experience negative.
It's important to extend your onboarding process past the first day or even the first week. Senior Director of HR at DraftKings, Graham Walters, explains what works with the process at his company.
On a quarterly basis, we have a new hire panel as well, so we try and get the whole group of new hires that have started in with a cross-functional team that changes every quarter so they can be just different areas of the business, understand what they do, and ask questions.
Finally, evaluate your onboarding. Solicit employee feedback on their experience and keep the conversation going as they progress in their role.
I see you're checking on your fantasy football scores there. Just kidding. All right, Karina, I'm taking off. You have yourself a great evening, and don't forget to lock up when you leave, okay?
Okay. Bye. Hello? An effective onboarding process cuts costly turnover and improves employee engagement and retention. For How to HR, I'm Ashley Hausa.
I will admit that I genuinely had a light bulb moment when I saw that video a few weeks ago. When I was doing this research, I was focusing so much on new employee orientation and how HR is supposed to be dealing with it, and it's, a bigger program than the individual manager. But at the end of the day, just like Marcia said in the video, it is the manager. That is the key focus of all new employee trainees, is that manager role. So this led me to thinking and start researching, what is it about the manager? Are they getting the training that they even know what to do? I know personally, I've never gotten training that says, hey, you're a manager and this is what you need to do with a new employee. So I was wondering, is that something just specific to my company, or is it specific to other companies? Is that what is making other companies more successful in their onboarding programs versus other companies? The first case study that I want to talk about when it comes to a manager's role in the onboarding process comes from a West Coast software development company. Their whole thing is they want to make contact prior to that first day. So once a manager receives confirmation that the employee accepted the position, they actually mail out a personal note that says how happy they are that they accepted the position, and if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to, reach out. Next, that manager will mail out a welcome packet. And in that welcome packet, they'll include employee handbooks, information about the company, recent successes, information if that employee is relocating out to that area, other stuff along that notion. So a week or so after they mail out that packet, they will follow up with a phone call to see if they got the packet, to make sure if they have any more questions about the packet. Again, feel free to contact us if you have anything. And then if there's a long lag time between when they got hired and the new employee start date, they'll keep in touch, maybe weekly phone calls or an email here and there. But the key thing is the manager will call the night before just to finalize the first day stuff, like where to park, where are we meeting, stuff like that. The second case study that I want to talk about is based off a Midwestern office equipment supplier. Their whole goal is to make the first day memorable for that new employee. They personally like to start off informally, and they send out a breakfast invitation. And this is off-site. They do this because new employees are nervous because they're about to embark on something new, and they feel like if they start something informally, it helps break those nerves down. After breakfast, they go back to the work site and they do a tour and give them a map so they can orientate themselves and, mark on the map, X marks the spot, this is where you're at right now, because, you get lost in new buildings. Next, the manager actually does personal introductions to all the coworkers, and they provide them a cheat sheet with a picture and a little bio. This will help the new employee put faces together and start learning names, because, that's always hard. You meet 50 new people on your first day and you're like, I know I met you, but I can't remember your name. But if they provide a little cheat sheet, it might help jog the memories back up. The next really cool thing that this company does is they have this thing called a welcome aboard lunch. And it's company sponsored in a break room or something like that. But it's where all the employees come in and welcome the new person. And, it's a socialization event, so it's no pressure, mingling around. And then after lunch, that's when they finally go into the specific job duties that the new employee will be doing. So the next case study we're going to talk about is when you're opening a brand new company. So this case study is a new hospital was opening, and with a new hospital, you don't have anybody. You don't have managers to bring into the onboarding system. You barely have a HR department to lead it. So what this hospital did was they were going to onboard about 1,200 new employees. Of those 1,200, 40% of the workforce transitioned from another hospital in the area. So they all had a baseline understanding of how a hospital runs. So they wanted to do a 12-week boarding process prior to opening, but a lot of the employees couldn't undertake that because they had commitments with their current employer until, that new hospital opened. So the HR team got creative and offered Saturday classes, but still that didn't capture everything and everyone that needed to go through the onboarding process. So they created this group of individuals called super users. And these super users can really correlate to a manager within the company. So these super users were available 24/7 in the first couple weeks to ensure that the new employees who did not get through all the onboarding process, that they could receive support immediately on the new systems and processes at the hospital. So we just covered a couple of case studies that show how managers are incorporated into new employee training programs. For most of the case studies, you get that underlying feeling that managers took this role on themselves, that it wasn't like HR guided or directed, but the manager stepping outside of their little department and making sure that new employee feels welcome. So managers are accountable of 70% of employee engagement variance. One study of 7,200 adults found that more than half of their employees will leave their job to get away from their managers. And I think this is the key part that a lot of companies are missing. They're missing the HR built new employee programs and how to incorporate managers in the field into that program. So to get this synergy better linked, companies need to start with clear communication of manager expectations. I know for me that I have never been told as a manager that I'm incorporated into the new employee onboarding program. I've always taken upon myself if I have a new employee, I need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure they're successful in their new job and they feel welcomed. But I think a lot of companies forget to mention that to their managers. So once these stronger relationships are built between HR and the managers when it comes into the sense of new employee programs, I think the managers will have more of a sense of empowerment over onboarding a new employee. So if HR is in charge of the more formal orientation programs and managers are in charge of more of the informal programs, HR really needs to sit down and talk to managers and train them on how to be part of integrating the new employee into their sections. HR-led manager training should include how new employee orientations is an investment in their people. They really need to harp on that it reduces employee turnover, thus leads to cost savings in their department. It also enables employees to become more productive quickly versus if they don't take an active role, those employees won't be as productive. Managers also need to include both the positive and negative features of the job, and they need to really talk about how the manager is not just responsible for the first day, but it needs to be over several weeks that they're integrating that employee into their section. Supervisors also need to be taught to explain how to the new employee their own likes and dislikes and how that relates to job performance, because that's a key player in all this is job performance and how do we get that new employee to success in the right way. Another super important thing that managers need to be taught to do is other employee introductions. They shouldn't be just walking around and be like, oh, that's Josie and that's Susie and that's, Mikey. It needs to be a formal introduction and explain with a little bio and be like, hey, Steve works in accounting. He will be in charge of X, Y, and Z. If you ever run into this issue, this is who you would talk to. It should be really in depth. And finally, managers need to work out the details, talk about lunch breaks, clock procedures, standard operating procedures within their department. Once managers learn this and know that this is an expectation of them, I really think the both informal and formal part of new employee orientation will really work out for a company. So to build an onboarding program that's both effective and memorable for the new employee and the manager, I've discovered this acronym called CAMPS, and it's the 5 key ingredients that will make this program work well together. First, you need to connect. You need to not only connect with the new employee, but you need to ensure the manager is connecting with the new employee. So you need to reach out prior to the start date of both the new employee and the manager and put them on the same page. And then you also need to check in on it throughout the first 90 days. Next, you need to align. You need to help that manager. Either they need a mentor or you need to ensure that the new employee receives a buddy too. So it's a 2-step process here to make sure that both the manager and the new employee feel supported throughout this process. Next, you need to manage. You need to schedule a time to meet with the manager and make sure if they have any questions or anything like that and they feel supported throughout this process. But you also need to make sure the manager is checking in with the new employee. Next, you need to plan. So you need to set up weekly milestones with that manager to make sure that their new employee is progressing through the steps correctly. And finally, you need to streamline. As the HR department, you need to make sure that the milestones are being met and the progress of the development plan is correct. So we finished up. We're at everyone's favorite part, the conclusion. So let's go over what we talked about. Let's go back to our first question. Do new employee orientation programs relate to retention? Obviously, we know that's a yes. We saw a bunch of facts tying directly into correlation and long-term effects if you do not have a new employees orientation program versus if you do. Why do some companies fail to put the time and energy into creating a better onboarding program? I think based off the research we've done, there is a missing link of ensuring the managers know their role within the onboarding program. I think a lot of HR companies really focus in on that formal, but they don't let the manager, who sees the employee day to day after those first couple days, setting that manager up for success. So what makes a good new employee orientation / onboarding program? That's an easy one. Ensure that they're using CAMP steps are being taken and make sure the manager understands the expectations of the program. Remember, CAMP is the connect, align, manage, plan, and streamline. If you do that, you're going to have a great onboarding program. I hope you kind of learned something. I hope you enjoyed the last 30 minutes with me, and I will see you guys online later. Bye-bye.